In class. Ba-dum, ba-dum. Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 4, I believe. It's so exciting. Today I have my good friend Adele with me. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Okay, awkwardly waving. Hi everyone, my name's Adele. Well, actually, my real name isn't Adele. I guess my Chinese name is Yumon. But everybody knows me by Adele. And yeah, I'm one of Claudia's best friends in the zoo. Yeah, funny story. I think we met literally first week of college, at least for me.
Yes.
That's how I remembered. Yeah.
Yeah, the topic that we're going to explore today is the kind of nuances and the details about just being quote unquote Chinese because the Chinese population in the world is definitely like a lot, like not just in China, but like all around the world. Like growing up, I always say like, oh, I'm Chinese, blah, blah, blah. But just wondering, like for you, like, do you guys, like, do you or the people you know in mainland China often like talk about or study or, just like have any conversations about the Chinese, like overseas Chinese people? Like, is that something that you guys ever really talk about?
Um, yeah, I guess I will. I think those are kind of big questions. I guess I'll first like introduce myself. So I am 100% Chinese. Like my nationality is Chinese and my ethnicity is Chinese. Grew up in China. Um, and before I met Claudia, really, I think you were one of the first one I met at college. Because before I really didn't thought about it. Because I think when I first knew you, I just saw you as like Malaysian. Like I didn't really thought about your like the Chinese part of your identity. But it's really interesting that you brought up that like in Malaysia, I think you're more prefaced like as I'm a Chinese because I think that's just how different our countries are. Kind of like here in the US too, like people talk a lot about their race, like maybe like I'm African American or I am like Japanese American, just throwing terms.
Mm-hmm.
But definitely like I think back home, like we don't really have that like multi, using the wrong term, but multi race
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
society. Like most like I want to say like majority of us are like Chinese, our nationality and ethnicity are Chinese. So I guess like growing up, the most I've learned is maybe like ABC, which is like American born Chinese
Mm-hmm.
or Australian born Chinese. And whenever I think about those terms, I just think that we had a really bad like terminology growing up. It's like banana, which is kind of it's really bad.
Yes.
Literally
Right, right.
means
We do
like
as well. Mm-hmm.
yeah, so you're yellow on the side and white inside. So like obviously that's not true for everyone. Like I have family members who are like ABC, and I think when she was younger, like I definitely remember like she didn't really want to speak Chinese because she went to an international school. And the main language there is spoken is English, and she can speak Mandarin, which is like Chinese, but I think she wasn't really confident in it because it wasn't her like primary language, I guess. So like she wouldn't really want to speak Chinese. And I just remember as a child, I was kind of offended. I was like, because my English wasn't that great, and I feel like, oh, maybe she thinks she's like superior
Mm-hmm.
than us. Or maybe I did think like she didn't really want to talk to us because like we don't speak English. Um so yeah, but I guess I didn't really have any friends who were in your situation until
Mm-hmm.
college. So
Right.
yeah. Mhm.
Yeah. So do you think like most people then in China, like are they aware of like the Chinese diaspora in like Singapore, for example, or Malaysia, Indonesia even, like all throughout Asia? Like do you think like are they mostly aware of it, just like not really know what the specific details are?
Um Honestly, I think that's a really case by case scenario, and I can only speak for myself because I think
Right.
it's again depends. I think where you live in China, and also, I feel like some family just have more like family members who are overseas. So I think growing up, I sort of know like the history. Like there's a lot of like Chinese overseas, like in like Singapore, like Malaysia, Indonesia. Um, and then also like I don't know how I remember this, but I know there's a lot of them in Europe, like Italy or Spain. That like I just find it really interesting because I never been really so they can speak like fluent Spanish and like Chinese.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
that was really cool. But I guess for me, like growing up, I just don't have a lot of like interaction with them. Like I didn't have any family members who are like that. But I think if you go to some from like more, some people call Shanghai the southern part of China.
Mm.
Some would argue it's the north part, which I think is really interesting. Like I think we're literally in the middle
Yeah.
and more towards the south. But I feel like if you're from like Fujian or Guangdong, which is like very southern part of
Yes.
China, there's definitely a lot more people who know or have someone in their family who lives in like
Mm-hmm.
Singapore, like Indonesia,
Yeah.
Malaysia, etc. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I would say like for me, like not really.
Yeah. Do you remember, like, you told me about that TV show about the Nyanger and stuff like
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
Yeah, which I think is so
mhm,
interesting. Do you
yeah.
remember what it was about?
It's so funny. I actually recently rewatched that.
Really? Oh
It's
my
on
gosh.
Netflix. I
Oh,
forgot.
wow.
Yeah, I think it's just because it's a really. Apparently, it was like one of the most popular TV shows ever in Singapore.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
And I watched it when I was really young. And okay, so it's called Sound Younger. I don't know what is it in English,
Mm-hmm.
but some of the stories in that it's a little bit dramatic, not gonna lie. Like it's
Yeah.
a very the story plot is kind of crazy.
Yeah, so since we're on that topic, I was wondering if you, like, kind of like a pop quiz time, like
My gosh.
how, yeah, like
Yeah.
how many percentage or like number of people of Chinese descent do you think is in Malaysia?
Oh my gosh. Okay, I'm gonna take a wild guess.
No, it's okay. Like it's not like a serious
Uh,
question. It's just kind of like a little
I want to say
segue.
like 15%.
Okay, yeah, I think that's a pretty good guess. I'm pretty sure right now it's 20 something. So 20 something percent. So like there it's not that far off. I believe there's about 6 to 7 million of us here.
Oh, also just kind of want to follow up on one of your comments earlier. I think, yeah, we grew up really differently, but I think something that definitely holds really true is I think we have a lot of like historical things that come in, kind of what we said about like customs or like holiday we celebrate. I think like, despite the national holiday, of course, but just like traditional Chinese holidays like
Yes.
Qingming or for
Yes.
example, those I think are like pretty much the same.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought that was really cool.
Yeah. I sometimes like just don't feel like I'm qualified enough to speak Mandarin like to people from China like when we go and order food. Sometimes I remember because the first time I went there, I was with like other Malaysian people and they like ordered in Chinese and then like the owner was like so impressed. They were like, "Oh, where are you guys from?" And then like they were like, "Oh, Malaysia." And I remember they were saying stuff like, "Wow, like Mandarin like know how to speak like Mandarin too. Wow." Like they were like so impressed. So like every time I go there, I'm like, oh, maybe I should like order in Mandarin or something, and maybe like they'll be like, wow. But then I'm like, oh, but what if I like sound really weird to them though? And I'm like, I don't know. It's just like a whole big thing, and I'm just like, oh, never mind. I'll just order the chili oil noodles, please. Thank you.
Yeah. Hey, like you always get better when you practice
That's
language.
true.
But honestly, I think it's so funny. Like, I think I've never really had a full on Chinese, like, conversation with you.
Mhm.
Yeah. Another thing I think is really interesting is, like, whenever you talk to your family, I haven't met, like, that many family who are, like, bilingual, but I love how you guys, like, mix
Yeah.
Mandarin, Malay, and English perfectly. It's just, like,
Yeah.
it makes sense. Like, it's, like, three languages or two languages in one sentence, but it would make perfect
Yeah, like from your perception, like do you think
sense.
most people from China would kind of like accept in a way, but like kind of view like people like Huaqiao or like overseas Chinese as like culturally the same. Like, do you think most people see it that way? Like you said, you grew up with like no learning about ABC stuff. Like, do most people kind of see them as like, oh yeah, we share the same culture, or they're like, oh no, like they're different, you know?
Mm, I would say most people would think they're the same, and I actually think a lot of people appreciate because some people, a lot of like Chinese who live overseas actually like I think identify with their Chinese like heritage more sometimes, more so than people who live in the country.
Mm,
Um, so I think most people, again, I guess speaking for myself, I think
mm-hmm.
I never thought about like, oh, like we're culturally different or something.
Mm-hmm.
So, quick question for you. So, like, how do you see, like, when you interact with, like, I guess Chinese from mainland, like, what do you have any perceptions about us, or like,
Mm.
what do you think we're like pretty similar? What's your hot take?
Yeah, for sure. I think I like growing up, I probably just assumed that like most of the things were like the same, and then like I watched like some shows, but I feel like most of them were like from Taiwan and stuff, like reality shows like
Hmm.
Sing Guang Da Dao. I don't know if you know that show, but it's like a singing
Yeah,
one.
I know.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So
We're also like that.
yeah,
Yeah.
but I think, I didn't really think that much of like the differences growing up because I was just like, oh yeah, because like I told you, like I saw myself as pretty much like Chinese, like that was like the way I would introduce myself to people, or like I would kind of identify
Hmm.
myself as. So
Yeah.
that was like I didn't really see a lot of differences, but then like definitely after I, studied in the States and stuff, I would be like, oh yeah, we have a lot of like this cultural like nuances and stuff like that. Like we have these
Hmm.
differences and also these similarities, and like those differences should be celebrated as well. It's what makes us, unique. Um,
Right.
but there's a lot of like those similar holidays and customs and you know maybe even like mindsets and stuff that we have in similar,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's
But
true.
actually, speaking of stereotypes though, it's like I think one of the
Hmm.
things, because when I went to college in Malaysia, there were like some transfer students from China. Definitely at the time, like one of like the stereotypes was like, oh, like they only like keep to themselves, like, or they're
Hmm.
really rich, they're all like so rich. Like, I remember
They're
I
wearing
went,
those Gucci
yeah,
belts.
like I remember one of the first times, like I went shopping at the Mizzou store.
Hmm.
With our mutual
Yeah.
friend that like actually introduced us, and she like was
Oh, okay.
literally just like picking out like those like Nike, Adidas like merch, and like she
Yeah.
didn't even care about the price, and I was like so impressed. I was like, oh my god, I guess it must be true that like like they're all like so rich, they don't care about like the prices. But then like both of us have the same clearance Mizzou sweatshirt, so I was like,
I
okay, yeah,
know
whatever.
that was so burn. We have this, well, it's champ. Is it champion? I think
Yeah, it is
it was
champion though.
branded.
Yeah, but I did pick it up from the clearance section, so
I did too. I was like, I gotta snatch that
I know. I
first.
was like, yes, that one's definitely it. And I know, then we like clash
Yeah.
all the time. We're like wearing the same shirt. But yeah, I love that for us.
Yeah,
So,
but for sure, I definitely don't find that stereotype. Actually, like, I'm one of the person who are kind of like, I don't know. I just don't think that it's necessary for us to own like luxury things at our age. But again, this is an unpopular opinion because I have a lot of friends who like study in China and they definitely like wear a lot of like luxury. Kind of that's the trends going on there. So I yeah, that's probably one of the things I don't really like about that stereotype. But that's pretty true. I definitely have a lot of friends who like to wear them. There's nothing wrong with it. Like
hmm,
as long as you don't, yeah. But I personally just like I don't think I
yeah.
need them. I'll be afraid to wear them out.
I mean, I guess that pretty much wraps up our discussions anyway.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you want to talk about, comment, kind of?
No, I really appreciate you having me on your podcast. Feeling really honored. Yeah, I don't
I'm
have
really
anything
happy
else
you're
at all.
here. Yeah, and I'm really glad that, you're my friend and like we got to like celebrate, things together and kind of talk about culture and like just all this stuff candidly and things like that. So I'm glad that you
Yeah,
came on. Yeah, thank you so much.
yeah, of
Yeah,
course.
take care everyone.
Bye.